Good morning and welcome to Man Machine's latest event in our series of the Future Design and Build events, where we take a look at BIM Collaborate Pro and specifically why we should be using it more commonly on projects. My name is Nathan Brownsword. I'm Sales Manager here at Man Machine, and I will be chairing this morning alongside my colleague Jonny, who will come on to and introduce in the next 10 or 15 minutes or so. So just to take a look at today's agenda about why we should be using BIM Collaborate Pro on my projects. You'll be with me for the next 10 or 15 minutes where we do initial introduction into Man Machine, especially for people that are new to the organisation or if they're joining us for the first time. After about 10 or 15 minutes, I'll then hand over to my colleague Jonny, who is a senior consultant here at Man Machine, and we'll do the technical demonstration and take you through all of the different facets of BIM Collaborate Pro. And then to round up, just at the end of the day, we will talk to you about in terms of actually deploying the software. So I appreciate that there's probably people that are joining the call that have used the software before, already have the software, others that don't, others that haven't seen it all before. So that will act as a really good opportunity to have a look at in terms of how to deploy the software properly, but more importantly, actually how to, or I suppose there'll be questions as well. There'll be questions around that side. So we are going to open up the channels. We've got the team here taking the questions and we'll try and answer as many as we can. So just to have a, I suppose before we get on to the more specifics around BIM Collaborate Pro and passing over to Jonny, just in terms of Man Machine. So as an organisation, Man Machine, we specialise both on the construction side, so working with architects, MEP consultants, kind of like the whole workflow, but we also have a team in the manufacturing side as well, which has actually, over the last couple of years, really helped us in terms of getting ingrained into the wider workflow, your supply chain, and working with product manufacturers or anything that goes into the actual building in that respect. So as an organisation, we're quite thickly spread in terms of our coverage now. We actually have a global presence over all 6 continents around the world, and we're thickly spread, like I say, into those markets. In terms of where the larger organisation, the larger part sits, we still have a much higher presence in Europe, mainland Europe for sure, but in terms of the UK, we've been growing quite steadily over the last 3 or 4 years now. So we're starting to get involved with more and more customers and talking to them about workflows and what they're trying to achieve. But that's enough about in terms of the wider group. As I say, we're spread across different locations, but I think the key thing is in terms of us as a Autodesk partner, we're one of the largest, or the largest they have in Europe. And what that means really is we understand not only the core products, what you'll see there in terms of the Autodesk Stocks side, the data management side there, but also then building into the other areas of the Autodesk Construction Cloud, which we'll talk to you in a bit more detail later on in the session. This also then lends itself very nicely in terms of your more commonly used tools in terms of like the design functions, or even looking at clash detection, QA, or whatever it may be. That's on the construction side. And again, we have all of the different tools available to us and are able to support them in the manufacturing division as well. Again, just in terms of how that works, so I know I've mentioned about that it's a connectivity between your supply chains, but we're starting to see that be ever more present in terms of what we're doing. In terms of what's going on at the moment, it's not been a usual set of circumstances over the last 18 months for sure, but we're starting to see a whole range of different questions asked of us by our customers, be it about sustainability, be it about the ever-changing BIM standards, what's come out with the ISO 9650 standards, but also in terms of that UK BIM framework. We're looking at things like site surveys and actually doing those through drones, and also digital twins. So we're starting to see a whole spectrum of different requirements from our customers, and ultimately we see ourselves as being able to actually not just support you from a software point of view, but also understand what you're trying to do and really come up with the right solution for you. So I think that's, like I say, there's a lot going on at the moment, especially in UK construction, the challenges that you're facing. In terms of how that fits in terms of, I suppose, the wider solutions that we offer, again, we could support you from absolute, I suppose, start to finish. So initial idea all the way through to facilities management, and that can range from supporting the teams with new software, having a person at the end of the phone that they can talk to. We pride ourselves on our BIM Ready services in terms of what we've been doing with, well, I suppose, the UK BIM Alliance, having a couple of consultants that sit on the specific working groups there, and have actually been really ingrained in terms of pushing forwards with, I suppose, the learning outcomes and when UCAS look to accredit. So all our training, again, as you see in the top right, is all aligned to those outcomes, but also we do have a full range of software training that we can offer, both from a standard point of view, in terms of, like, say, out of the box essentials training, fundamentals courses, right through to actually doing workshops that are specific for your projects and that can meet your learning outcomes. Then moving into, I suppose, the other areas that we can support you on, I think software deployment, asset management, I think that's kind of by buy or buy. It's something that we've been doing for a long, long time now. But in terms of actually, as I mentioned about workflow, looking at what you're trying to achieve, making sure it fits for you, it's right for your project, we can do that in the sense of actually with some of our consulting work, but also what we're going to talk to you about today in terms of the cloud offerings and more specifically around Autodesk. So to looking at Autodesk Construction Cloud, and just before I hand over to Jonny, so I suppose a short background, because I think people on the call will be very familiar with some of the old, I suppose, the old names for some of these technologies. BIM 360, as it is, has been dropped. It's apart from BIM Collaborate Pro and one part of the Autodesk Construction Cloud, we're starting to remove that annoying acronym that is BIM. But what we've now got is some consolidated programs in terms of that will take you from not only as what will support you with design collaboration all the way through to actually being on site and I suppose request for information, snagging, whatever it may be, and into later stages where you actually owner operator and point of handover. So we've now got a complete package that can support you end to end. And I suppose the biggest thing here, or the most popular change that's happened with the Autodesk Construction Cloud, is that you now have the ability in terms of you can bring your own subscriptions. So having some of the software that's available to you in your AC collections, you can now plug in not only with other teams that are internally in the organization or different parts of a wider group, you can now actually plug in with your supply chain, or you can invite people in that are actually wanting to collaborate with you. So we're now starting to see a more collaborative way of working. I know I've just said that words and that phrase a couple of times now, but we really are starting to see it go beyond that. So in terms of the Autodesk Construction Cloud, just a final point, and I will hand over to Jonny. How does it actually sit now? So we have kind of like the underpinning area. So what was BIM 360 Docs is now Autodesk Docs. That is the central repository for all the data. And then what you have from there is a very easy, or I suppose you can select more commonly two takeoffs that certainly come into the market. But you have BIM Collaborate or BIM Collaborate Pro. It's about design collaboration and actually people being able to work on the projects, models. You have the two variants there because one is active design collaboration, and with Collaborate, it's for non-CAD users. In terms of the build side, that's much further on into the project. So in terms of with people being on site, actually getting information or real-time and reliable information to people, that's where build comes in. But we're not going to be looking at today. I will hand over to Jonny Pye now, and we'll be taking a look in a bit more detail of Autodesk Stocks and BIM Collaborate Pro. Thank you.
So I'm going to be presenting the technical side of what Nathan's discussed here. We're going to be looking at Collaborate Pro specifically. I'm going to do a quick kind of positioning of Collaborate Pro, which goes into a bit of detail about some of the benefits and putting it in place with all of the products that have come out more recently. So just to introduce myself very quickly, my name is Jonny Pye. Here's me working from home. Here's me working in the office, bit of both. My background's been in product design. I've come from a structural and civil background, and at Man and Machine, I've done a lot of technical consultancy. So working with Revit and a lot of the kind of things that go with Revit, including the cloud products that we'll be looking at today. So the main focus for today is going to be Autodesk Stocks and BIM Collaborate Pro. The reason we're going to be looking at both these products is you can't have one without the other. So Autodesk Stocks underpins Collaborate Pro. It's where everything is going to sit. So probably 1/3 of today will be kind of on Autodesk Stocks, and the majority will be on Collaborate Pro. But they're intertwined. in terms of how they work together. So again, just having a quick look at that suite that we've got here. There are other products in here. Autodesk Stocks underpins everything. So that underpins Collaborate, Takeoff, and Build. Having a quick look at Autodesk Stocks to begin with, as of the kind of beginning of this year, pretty close to the beginning of this year, Autodesk Stocks is now included with the AEC collection. So there might be a few of you out there that actually have this product and maybe not aware that you have it. It was something that was added, I think in March, I think it was. But if you've got the AEC collection, you've got access to a license for Autodesk Stocks, and you can use that. You can also buy Autodesk Stocks on its own, so you don't need to have the AEC collection or get the AEC collection to actually get Autodesk Stocks. So if there are users out there who perhaps need to use it without the AEC collection, you can get that as well. Some of the things that Autodesk Stocks can do, really good for making sure that you have the latest drawings. It has a complete version history in there, so making sure that you have access to everything that's happened on a particular file. And the amount of files that it can view is pretty impressive. There's a lot of non-native Autodesk software out there that you can actually view on a browser, so it's really good for being able to actually see maybe information that you don't actually have the software to be able to view some of those things. And there's a lot of compare tools, which we'll be looking at today in there as well. One of the really cool new features of Autodesk Stocks is the ISO 19650 naming convention. So if you are looking to have some BIM workflows within your, you could use this as an EDMS or a CDE, you could be looking at getting that naming convention right when you actually upload it. I'll do a demonstration of this because it's quite easy to use actually, but it checks the data when you upload it, and it allows you then to batch update information as you're putting it in there as well. So there's some really nice tools for any document managers out there, document controllers who might be looking at controlling information. So that's Autodesk Stocks. Like I say, we'll do a bit of a deeper dive on some of the other kind of benefits to Autodesk Stocks as well, just because they will be a part of Collaborate Pro. But having a look at Collaborate Pro, some of you may remember BIM 360 Design, and like Nathan said, bit of a rebrand. You still have access to BIM 360 Design or BIM 360 products if you're using. They haven't disappeared, but they have, in terms of BIM 360 Design, rebranded it now to Collaborate Pro. So even if you are using BIM 360, you will see a license of Collaborate Pro, but the Autodesk BIM Collaborate Pro will allow you access to both new platform and BIM 360. So looking at BIM Collaborate and BIM Collaborate Pro, I'm actually going to just talk about the two licensing structures for it, because there is a slightly different licensing structure to allow you better usage across the team. Autodesk Stocks is underpinning it, so that's just really kind of something that I need to stress. And this is the kind of the licensing structure that you've got for BIM Collaborate Pro. So there's the Pro version and there's just the Collaborate version. So they both have exactly the same, except the Pro version. So you get Autodesk Stocks with both, you'll get the cloud capabilities with both. The biggest difference, or the only difference, is that with Collaborate Pro, this is for your designers, this is for anyone who needs to collaborate or work share on either Revit, Civil 3D, or Plant 3D. But otherwise, everything else, exactly the same. So the reason that you have these two license structures is because potentially there's going to be document controllers who actually need to use the cloud capabilities to be able to manage the data and not necessarily use the design software. And so you have these two license structures, so it's more cost effective. You don't need to buy the Pro version for both the document controllers and perhaps the people doing the design. And some of the benefits, some of the things that come with it, obviously you've got the ability to be able to use this in Revit, Civil 3D, or Plant 3D. We're going to be looking at this predominantly inside of Revit, but it will work with Civil 3D or Plant 3D as well. Obviously, it allows you to access your model anywhere, so it's really useful for that. And it means that you've got a single platform, potentially for all of the teams that you're working with, not necessarily in your company, to be able to share information. In the Design Collaboration Cloud module, you get the 2D, you've got 2D or 3D workflows actually in there. It allows you to really easily share your designs in what are called packages. We'll go into those in a bit of detail. And there's nice tools in there to be able to create resolutions for issues that you might be having with other teams as well. And if you've got a kind of weekly meeting, a coordination meeting, perhaps it's a really nice way of visualizing everything together that has been formally shared. The other tool that you now get with Collaborate Pro and Collaborate is the model coordination part of this tool. So this is automatic clash detection. As you share the models, or even if you're just working on the model and you're uploading and publishing, what this tool, this platform will do is take the models and clash them together. So this is really nice for being able to communicate design changes, create those issues, group clashes. And there's actually a workflow that goes into Navisworks as well. So you can use this as a kind of hybrid system if you needed to. But it's a really kind of quick spell checky type way to be able to just make sure there aren't any kind of clashes that are going to get away in the model. So just a few points, maybe 3 points, just to discuss perhaps why Collaborate Pro is going to be useful on your projects. So probably the main one I would say at the moment is to do with where people are working. Collaborate Pro is going to allow you to work from anywhere. If you've got Wi-Fi, you're going to be able to download that model, work on it, and then upload your changes to the cloud from anywhere. And that's not just useful necessarily for where people are working, but also for IT structures. It means less maintenance. It means you're going to be able to, if you need to, just go on another laptop and essentially get the model on that other laptop and not have to worry about getting into a server or working with Revit server and accessing it. You can just log in, get the model, and then work on it. So it's nice and easy structure to be able to work in a team within your Revit model or plant or civil 3D models. So that's the main reason. The other reasons as well is because you have nice workflows to make sure the version that you have linked to your model and that you are coordinating with is current. Obviously, there is human discipline to this statement, but there are really nice ways to be able to make sure that you have the current version of the model. And then last of all, while we are doing this inside of Revit, there are nice workflows with non-native Autodesk software as well. So for coordination purposes, for sharing, uploading, collaboration purposes, you can use DWGs, IFCs, and Revit. And IFCs can be exported from the likes of MagiCAD, ArchiCAD, things like that as well. So if you do have multiple teams working in different softwares, there is the ability to be able to actually share and collaborate with those teams as well. So we'll get into the technical demo. Just head to my browser. So I'm going to start from the beginning. Like I said, I'm going to start in Autodesk Stocks to begin with. So some of you might be familiar with the interface here that we're looking at. Maybe you've used Autodesk Stocks and not Collaborate Pro perhaps, or maybe you've used BIM 360. So it is a bit of a different interface to BIM 360, but there are similarities. So what I'm looking at here is the landing page for my projects. And this is actually connecting both my Autodesk Stocks projects and also my BIM 360 projects. So if I just search for a project in here, you can search a number, a name, whatever it is, and it will just pick up on every project that you have access to. I've got access to about 150 projects, I'd say. It makes it really easy to find the project you're looking for. So we're going to be working in this 111,000 project. I got the numbers wrong there, but anyway. So Autodesk Stocks itself is a folder-based platform. It's browser-based. What we're looking at here is kind of the landing page where the files will sit. So if you have an internal maybe server that you use with a file structure, you can replicate that within this system. What I'm going to quickly do is I'll just jump into a couple of the things that I've got set up in here just to have a look at some of the capabilities of the product. I'm also actually going to create some issues in the Revit model, which I'm going to pick up in Revit and just show you a nice workflow there for being able to take your issues that may be created by a manager and then actually have a designer kind of fix those issues. So if I head into my architecture folder here. So what I'll do is I'll just run through some of the file types that you can view in here. So obviously this works very well with Revit models. So I've actually got the Revit model in here that I'll be working on in a bit. And so with Autodesk Docs, if you just got Autodesk Docs, you can actually work on a non-work shared Revit model if you needed to. So if you haven't got a team working on a model, you just want to work out of the cloud on a standalone model, that's something that you can just do with Autodesk Docs. So with the viewer that I've got here, what I can view is everything that I have published from Revit. So that includes 2D views, if I have published them, and any 3D views. The reason this is going to be important is because of the workflow when we get to model coordination. You'll notice here I've actually split these out by floors, and that'll become pertinent when we look at the model coordination side of things. So what I can do here is I'm just going to head to my AD full model. And this is actually just the entire model without any flaws in it. I actually also have a 3D Autodesk Docs view here. And this actually has every model in it. So if I just hide the walls in here, it's a federated model with all the links in it that I have straight out of Revit as well. So it is possible to actually create a federated model with the models that you're working on inside of Autodesk Docs. So like I say, what I'm going to do is I'm going to head to my full model arch. I'm then going to use my levels tool to just pick a level. I'll choose level 4. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create an issue. So this is one of the tools that you have inside of Autodesk Docs that I'm then going to pick up inside of Revit in a bit, and I'll just fix it. So it won't be anything too strenuous. Just find something maybe that I can change. So maybe if I just pick this door. And so the workflow we're looking at here, it could be a way of replacing emails that you have. Maybe if you've got kind of design workflows where you've got someone checking a model, and you could create these issues on drawings as well. And I'm just going to say, well, change to double door. So you can add lots of metadata in here. You can add a description. You can add who it's going to be assigned to, obviously very important if you're assigning this to someone in your design team. You can add due dates. So we'll say Friday. It'd be nice, 2 days to change the door. We can also just hit a start date if we wanted to. The data that you fill in here is all going to be useful to be able to create reports from. So if you're wanting to have a look at things that are overdue or things that are assigned to specific people, you can actually create reports in Autodesk Docs based on all of the metadata that we put in here. And you can customize these issues as well. So now that I've created that issue, I'm just going to close this down. You do have the option to actually set this to unpublished if you did want to kind of just create all your issues and then publish them later. And there is also going to be an activity log, which is going to be useful to be able to see the kind of record of this issue. Someone fixing it, someone creating it, maybe it going backwards and forwards a few times before it's actually closed out. So I'm going to pick that up later. That's just kind of important to note. Issues inside of Autodesk Docs, it's very bread and butter. It's a really nice tool for communication, whether it's on PDFs, whether it's a model, DWGs, anything you want really to kind of communicate things backwards and forwards. So now that I've got that issue in here, just a couple of kind of, I guess, things that you can do in the viewer while you're here. You've got the option to compare the model against any versions that have been created. So when I come to edit this inside of Revit later and publish it, if I wanted to, what I can actually do is I can compare the changes that have happened in the project. So if you're a project manager, wanted just to keep track of things that are going on in your model, you maybe want to see what's happened over the last week or the last day. It's really easy to find things in here that have changed. So you can see everything that's been added, and you can filter by any of these things. There's been a few doors added in the project. What I could also do if I wanted to is just see the modified. You can actually filter by discipline, which is really useful. So if you only wanted to see architectural elements or just structural elements, you can. And then you can go all the way down to things like the categories of things. So we've got doors. I'll just have a quick look at perhaps a door that's changed in here. So if I just choose maybe this door here, just have a look at what the change was. I can actually flick between the change. So the door's actually just moved across the wall. And I'd be able to look at this in 2D as well, because I've published a 2D plan view of where that door actually sits. I would be able to have a look at that door. And you can actually view this in a tree format as well to be able to really nail down exactly where this would sit in terms of information that's been published from family information and things like that. So that's viewing a Revit model. Just having a look at some of the other model viewers that you have in here as well, just to give you an idea of kind of what's possible. NWCs, you can actually view NWCs and NWDs as well if you wanted to. So again, we've got versions to be able to view things that have been published. The system works very well with IFCs. So we've got an IFC in here, and the viewers look very similar. You actually have the ability to be able to compare versions of IFC. So that's really useful. Like I say, if you're not necessarily even using Autodesk products, you can actually output the IFC. You can visualize the changes, and it's really interesting what the IFC change visualization picks up on. So when this is comparing, because an IFC is exported slightly differently, you're going to get information that differs from that you get from Revit, but it does allow you to, again, kind of filter down on what's been modified, what's been added, what's been changed. You've actually got the ability to just see geometry changes. And so you can pretty much kind of get similar outputs in terms of what you're actually looking for. And then you can see exactly what has changed. So this is just moved across. The way that the IFC is working here is different to Revit. So it is picking up on a lot of the kind of individual elements. So there's a lot of the model viewing capabilities in here. Just to quickly go through again some of the other file types, obviously PDF is a big one. The little tick next to the PDF just signifies that this particular file has a naming enforcement on it. So anything I upload into this should have a correct naming convention. So I'm not going to show you how to set this up, but I will just very quickly show you how this works because it's very easy to use. So I've got a couple of PDFs in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag this new issue into the folder. It's then going to give me a view of the enforcement. And if there were any issues, so if the naming convention didn't, if that name of the file didn't work, I could then just in here, make sure it does, or I can just actually select all of them and then throw them into a holding folder for getting information about what is actually the correct name. So with all of these actually being correct anyway, I can actually then at the end of this, make sure that the other parts of things that aren't in the name, things like status, are actually correct. So if I just type in a couple of classifications in here, so these are the drawings. And so this is actually out of the box. I've actually done nothing in terms of setting this up, and the classification comes across as well. Rename and validate, and then upload to folder. So there's really nice tools in there for document managers just to be able to upload files and just double check that the name that they're uploading against is just being checked against what you've actually stated should be the naming convention. And anyone who's used ISO 19650 naming conventions or previously 1192 naming conventions will be savvy with the different parts of that. So they don't take too long to upload. What I'm actually going to do is I'll just quickly show you the compare version with PDFs as well, because that works quite nicely. So I've got version 3 here, and what I can do is I can just grab my version 3, compare it to version 1. Ooh, a little bit too quick for it. So if I just compare these two versions, it's not going to work the same way as Revit, but there are some really nice workflows for managers to be able to just quickly compare 2D sheets as well. And the reason this is important when we're talking about Collaborate Pro is because you can actually share 2D files as well as 3D files in the packages that you create in the swim lanes in Collaborate Pro. So you can actually share formal kind of deliverables of issues of PDFs if you wanted to as well. And we can see here, we've got changes. We've got version 3 in red, version 1 in blue. We've had some wall change moving over here. Just a couple of changes on this floor. And there's different ways of viewing this. So if you prefer, you can actually use this slider, which is quite a nice systematic way to be able to check the changes between the two versions as well. So again, some really nice tools to be able to just compare things in Autodesk Stocks. And we are still just looking at Autodesk Stocks as well. These features that we're looking at here are things that you could potentially use on Autodesk Stocks at the moment. We've got PDFs. DWGs actually work exactly the same way. There's some really nice functionality. And again, just in Autodesk Stocks, you could actually open these up inside of AutoCAD, and I could edit these to create new versions. These have just been uploaded as they are. But they're viewable online, so if you've got someone who doesn't have AutoCAD, again, very useful for someone who might need to be able to just view something without opening it up natively. So just because of time, I'm not going to go through everything in here. I will go through some of the other file types that you've got. So Autodesk Stocks is linked to Office 365, so I can open up Word documents and edit them in the browser if I wanted to. And this, again, allows me to have a complete paper trail of everything that's happening on the project. So what I can do is I can just put my name in here. I'm just editing these using Office 365, so you will need a license of Office 365 for this to work. But it's really nice for having not to download. When you're using cloud systems, sometimes you have to download things, then upload them. You can just edit it in place and know exactly who's made those changes. It's a really nice workflow for kind of making sure that you don't get those duplicates of documents. So I have version 3 in here. And what's nice about every single file inside of Autodesk Stocks is that you have a complete paper trail of everything that's happened with that document. So I can see here, someone's viewed it, someone's edited it. And this is going to allow me to make sure that if there are any events, I have a full record of everything. And if the list is huge, you can actually filter by a person. You can filter by an activity. So maybe I'm looking to see who's just viewed this file. I've got the capability to be able to make sure that that list just shows me what I want to know. Who deleted something, who edited something, what dates, what time. It's all there, and exportable as well in case you need it. So like I say, it works very well with Office documents. So as well as design documents that we'll be looking at predominantly today, works very well with Office-based documents. And recently added as well, you can actually now view point clouds, only in 2D on Autodesk Stocks. So you can just upload your point clouds as an RCP file with a support file. And this will allow you then to view the static points in the project. So this is the example Autodesk file, and I can just take measurements and things like that if I wanted to within the file. So if I just take this X measurement across here, I can take measurements from the point cloud. I'm doing this all from the browser, so this is really useful when maybe you've got quite a large point cloud file and maybe you're struggling just to take some measurements or just even just use it for reference. That's exactly what this would be really useful for. So that's an overview of the file types that you can view, some of the things that you can do in those documents. There are markups as well that you can create in PDFs and things like that. I'm not going to labor those points or spend too much time on Autodesk Stocks. I do want to spend a bit more time in Collaborate Pro. I will mention that you can create reviews, and those reviews can contain the capability to be able to pull drawings and put them into other places. So those drawings that I put into the drawings folder here, I could have created a review workflow that then pushes them into shared once they've been approved by certain people. You also have transmitters in here to be able to send issues of documents. So I think that's pretty much all I'm going to do on Autodesk Docs. There's some really, really useful capabilities in Autodesk Docs on its own. But with Collaborate Pro, there is going to be a lot more capability to be able to control information that's flowing between different disciplines, between different departments. Maybe there's models flowing around, or maybe you need a nice way for teams to be able to share things at certain points in a project. So I'm going to switch from my docs area to my design collaboration area. And I will be going through model coordination as well, because it is a part of Collaborate Pro and Collaborate licenses. So you will also get this coordination space, which we will look at. So in design collaboration, the main feature of this space is the swim lanes. And some of you may have seen these before. And this is essentially a timeline of everything that's been shared on a project. So perhaps on a project, you've been asked every Friday, every 2 weeks to share information. And then on the Monday, you might review it. That's pretty harsh kind of date. But essentially what we might have here is officially shared packages of information at certain points. And so in the swim lanes, and I can actually switch between the teams in here because I'm an admin for all of them. Typically, you would just be a member of one of the teams, and you would be able to view what you have shared, what others have shared but you wouldn't be able to see perhaps some of the other things, like when other people have just published but not actually shared a model. So the idea behind each of these swim lanes is that at a certain time, someone will create a new package. So I'm just going to do this now. And the folders that we looked at in the work in progress folder in my Autodesk Stocks area contained those different disciplines. You will have noticed architectural, electrical, mechanical, and each of the teams will only have access to their individual folders. And so what I can actually do is, let's just say perhaps it's got to that point where I need to share information. Maybe I need to share the model. Maybe I need to share some documents as well. So I can actually just share maybe some of the, I'll share that Word document that I edited earlier. So that could be a spec sheet, that could be information about schedules, etc., that are going to be important to the model, whatever it is that you need to hand over at that point. So I'm going to hit save, and then I'm going to hit share. So at this point, we need to give this a name. So as you know, this is going to be issue 4 on this project. And I'm just going to share this. Now, a couple of things are going to happen when I hit share. This is quite a big thing that I'm doing here. So this wouldn't be something that everyone can do. It would just be for a select person, perhaps, to initiate that share. Because what I've done is I've actually packaged up the information I want to share with all the other teams. So now that I've shared that, all the other teams, and if I just switch to electrical, we'll see what this looks like. We'll see a new shared package. And then the process, so if I pretend now that I'm perhaps the electrical team's process now for that electrical team to use that package and that model would be then to select the package that's been shared, review the changes, review what's been shared, etc., etc., and then to decide to consume the model. So there haven't been any changes since last time, just because I have shared a model that I have already shared. So at this point, I would then consume. And this is also quite a big deal. This is actually going to take this model and it's going to put it into my the electrical team's folder in their consumed folder, which is where you are linking all of the models to your model that you're working on. So I'm going to just explain the process, a couple of things that have happened with the process that I've just done. So going right back to the beginning, the first thing where I was the architect and I just shared the model. When I shared that model, I would have been putting into the docs area, into the shared folder, a model, architect's model. When the electrical team then consumed the model, they will be putting that model into their consumed folder. And so what I'm going to quickly do is I'm just going to go back to my docs area and just show those two folders and where they sit, because it's a very important part of the process. So first of all, when I shared the model, a model will automatically put into the swim lane published models folder. This is typically called shared. I've actually just renamed it for helping kind of see what that does. And then when the electrical team consumed, if I just go to this electrical folder here, they will have put that new model into their consumed folder. And this is where all the links would be to your Revit model. I'm going to be going through this in Revit, so you'll see kind of this process. But now I've updated that model. When I go into Revit, I could refresh, reload my models, and I will have that new architect's model. But you can see using the swim lanes, you have the opportunity to check the changes before you put it into your link. The other thing to mention, just in Autodesk Stocks, just because I could kind of miss it, is that you can add permissions to folders. And the way that I've created all of my permissions is based on a role. So only the architects, only members assigned as an architect can access architecture. Only electrical engineers can access the electrical folder. You can customize these role names. So you're not stuck to the out-of-the-box names. It can be whatever terminology you use. But if you use roles, the reason these are going to be so useful is if you decide that this project is a template that you would then like to actually recreate another project from, those roles will carry and save you a lot of time in terms of setting up permissions as well. So going back to the design collaboration module, there's a couple of useful tools within the collaboration module, which is going to help me just to visualize what I have in my project. So I'm going to flip back to my architectural team. And one of the things that I will always have is the ability to look at the aggregated set of models in my project. So this is a set of all the models that have been consumed by me as the architectural team. And I have the opportunity to color these based on the team's colors. You can actually change the team's colors, but this could be a formal coloring system whereby the markups you create on sheets, things like that, actually marry up with the team that you're working on if you wanted to set up a project like that. So what I can do here is if I just hide the architect's model so we can see a bit more of the insides, the guts of the building, you can see here I can turn on the colors, and this might just help if you're doing a visual inspection of your model, maybe in a coordination meeting, to be able to actually see the way that models are working together. And certainly if you've got anything that's not coordinated properly, you'd notice at this point as well. So inside this area, you can pull through phasing from your Revit model. This will be coming from your primary Revit model that you're using. You also have all of the levels, again, coming from your primary model, so you can actually just see a section of the models together if you need to. And you'll have a content browser for everything that has been released from yourselves as well. So it's a really useful area if you're just looking to kind of maybe, like I say, visualize everything in one place, talk about the changes maybe in that coordination meeting on a project. It would be a really useful place to be able to kind of visualize those and work on them quite systematically. Okay. So one of the things I didn't mention also is that the shapes at the top here do represent different parts of what's happening in terms of the packages that I have. So looking at these squares here, these are actually published but not shared models. You wouldn't see these if you didn't have admin permission rights, or if I didn't have admin permission rights to these swim lanes. The circles are representing the latest. So if I just change the structural team, they represent the latest shared packages. So the structural team actually haven't consumed any models from the other teams yet. And so their consumed folder within Autodesk Stocks, which is what they'd be using as links to their model, they haven't got any of the latest shared packages in there. So just looking at some of the ability, the things that you've got in here that might be useful. Project status, this will be useful for anyone managing this system, just to make sure that everything's uploaded properly. Something that's come out of beta recently is this changes feature, which I'll demonstrate how it works and why it's useful. So perhaps on a project, and this might be more pertinent if you're in an electrical team, you host a lot of things perhaps to walls, maybe switches, maybe lights to ceilings, etc. And sometimes those things might have been deleted or maybe changed or modified. And so what this area allows you to do is to create what are called watch groups. And if I'm part of the electrical team, like I say, a lot of my components are probably hosted to perhaps the architect's model. And so there's potential for things like ceilings, if they've moved or disappeared or things like that, to affect my electrical model. And so what this watch space is going to do is allow me to focus on specific parts of the model from another team. So what I can do is I can say, I want to know in one of my watch groups when the ceilings have changed. So if I click next, give this a name. Spell ceiling right, hopefully. There we go. And so now what I have is the ability to check. So when the architect releases a new model, and actually I don't have any changes because there haven't been any changes between the last package shared. When the architect releases a model and there is a change with a ceiling, deleting of a ceiling, or there's a ceiling that's been added, I will get a notification within my watch group. So that would probably be useful for things like interior walls, exterior walls, ceilings, especially if you're electrical, you're hosting things, you need to know what it is in the model that's actually going to affect your hosted elements. So that watch group is really nice for anybody kind of managing bigger projects. The next tool that we have in the design collaboration area is meetings. So if you're ever having those coordination meetings and perhaps you need just a record of everything that's happened on the project, you can actually save all of things like the agenda, the minutes, the meeting discussion points within this meetings area, so that later on when you need to come back and check what was discussed and who was invited to those meetings, you've got all of that stuff in one place. You've got all those meeting minutes in one place. There's some really nice features in here as well for keeping meetings. So if you've created a very long meeting discussion, you've actually only maybe closed out half of the things that you wanted to actually work on in that session. You can create a follow-up meeting with all of those points in that exact same state, and then you can perhaps go over the next points again. You've also got the option to create calendar invites for people. So if you need to share an Outlook kind of calendar invitation, you can do, and then you can export all of the things that you've spoken about into PDF as well. And there's lots of things to be able to assign specific tasks, meeting discussions to people, add due dates to these. So there's really nice ways to make sure that all that information about everything that you're doing in coordination is in one nice, easy to find place. And you've got the ability as well to be able to add Zoom links as well, which is at the moment, the way everyone is working, very much kind of a kind of system that everybody's working with. So some really useful tools in the design collaboration platform. And so just to go back to the two license structures, if you had Design Collaborate on its own, you could use everything that we've looked at here in the design collaboration module, but you wouldn't have the ability to do what I'm about to do, which is to go into Revit and then work on some of the models that are being hosted centrally in Autodesk Stocks. Collaborate Pro is what you would need to use work sharing or collaboration on either Revit, Civil 3D, or Plant 3D. So we've had a good look at the cloud platform, and I will be going through, like I say, model coordination in a bit, but I'm going to jump into Revit, and I'm actually going to close down the model I've got here just because I'll show you how perhaps you'd open it officially. So I'm using Revit 2022, but this will work on US servers back until 2018.3, slightly different for EU servers. So I'm going to just choose my Autodesk Stocks logo that I have in Revit 2022. And this is going to give me access to all my projects that are in Revit 2022. So the really useful thing about this process is that when you've created a project, it ties it to a version, and there are ways of upgrading those versions within the project. It ties it to the version, which means you only see the projects which relate to the year that you are using. So you don't get the same kind of issues where you've got people needing maybe to move back or forwards. It will just show you the projects in here that are Revit 2022. And again, very easy to find those projects. So I can choose from the project list at the top, the project I want to find, London offices. Again, with those permissions, I would normally only have access to the folder that I would be working on. So if I'm an admin in this project, so I see everything. I just want to kind of reiterate that Autodesk Docs and all of this is very much permission based. And so there is very granular ways of making sure that people only have access to what they're working on. So I'm going to head to the architecture tab, head to my Revit models. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to open up my architectural model. Now, because this is a central model, I could have anybody who has access to the model opening up this model and working on it as though it's just a normal central model. The process for actually setting this up is just exactly the same as you would normally set up a central file. It's just that you're doing it in the cloud rather than on a local server or on Revit server. So there is no difference at all to set up. It's just the way you access it. And actually, the ability to open the central model when you're working like this is very much more difficult. So it's a very nice barrier to entry if you've got new starters, perhaps, that haven't worked on central models that much. As long as they open them up the way that I'm opening up here, you're never going to get those kind of central model issues that perhaps you might if you're opening them up from a Windows Explorer. So hopefully this doesn't drop anything because I am using the internet to open this up, but it's not actually opening up or downloading the entire model. It's actually stored locally, it's checking for changes, and then it's just going to load the changes in. So it's a very efficient system when you're opening up the model. And the model we're looking at here isn't small either. So we've already had a quick look at kind of what it is that we're working on. We've got this quite large office building. And so I am working on, technically at the moment, a local model. And when I want to push the changes back to the central model, I would actually just synchronize, and as I would normally, synchronize the central. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up that issue that I created earlier. I'm going to change it, and I'm going to synchronize with central. Now, when I synchronize with central, it's not actually going to push the model up to Autodesk Stocks. There is a official published process for doing that, because you wouldn't want all your changes to continuously be showing in Autodesk Stocks. So without further ado, I'm just going to maximize this. I've got my issues tab up here. So this is a separate install that's on the updates for in your Autodesk kind of products page if you want to get this issues tool. It's being updated quite regularly. I think they're on a later version than they were when they started now. So there's some nice tools in here. So just opening up that issues tool, you can see those 3 issues inside of Revit. You can imagine maybe if I am a designer or in a design team of perhaps maybe, I don't know, 6 people, what I would want to do here is I would have got an email notification for my issues. I could then just filter down on any of the metadata that was in those issues. So in here, what I'd be doing is saying, well, I just want to see anything assigned to myself. Just hit done. And that's just going to show me my issues. I've actually got my issues in here anyway. But we can actually already see that the issue in here is the one that I created earlier, which is the one over here. Now, the really interesting thing about this system, which I really like, is the fact that if there are other models in Autodesk Stocks with that are the same, essentially this architect's model, maybe other people are creating issues. You can actually create issues in other models in Autodesk Stocks, and then you can load those issues into this Revit project that I'm working on it here. So we've actually got 3 versions of this model on Autodesk Stocks. Maybe they're links that others are using, or maybe they're part of the coordination system that we're using. But it means, obviously, as the architect, I only have access to my work in progress Revit model. But perhaps there's another team, maybe a coordination team or another design team that needs to add some issues, but you don't want them to have access to this particular file because they're working on one that you shared earlier. They can add issues to it, and you can pick those issues up just by selecting the one that you want to add in terms of the issues they've created, and then pushing them into the issues display that we've got here. So really nice way to be able to work with issues. And so if I want to view this issue that I've got in here, perhaps you've used some of the tools that do similar things to this, all I need to do is select it. You're probably going to find, like most of these kind of tools, that there's things in the way. Not a problem, because the pin was on an element, I can use the selection box just to select the particular element that I want to do something with. So I've got that door that I needed to change. So what I'm going to do here is just double check that I've got the space to be able to do that. Select the door, change this to a double door. We have an issue in terms of where it's sitting. So bring that across. Now that I've made the change, perhaps what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, well, this is in review. I might add a few things in terms of comments or descriptions. So completed door change, just an example. Just hit submit. So that will have now changed color. So this really allows me to see what's actually been done as I'm going. I can see which issues are still outstanding, but I've changed the door. I've done or fixed the issue that was the problem. I'm then going to synchronize with Essential. Again, I'm being taxing on the internet, so hopefully there's not going to be any issues in doing this. But again, just to kind of reiterate, because I am only pushing the changes, it's very efficient in terms of the speed and process at which this does upload to Central. The other thing to mention as well that is very important is that I do have in the publish settings my set one with particular views and sheets that are being published to Autodesk Stocks. So that is how you control the views and the sheets that are being published to Autodesk Stocks. So now I've done that, I'm actually just going to close it down, safe to do so. And what I'm going to do as well is just go back and then forwards in these folders just to make sure that I do have the latest publishable folder. Now, what I want to do, because the synchronizing essential will not have pushed my changes up to Autodesk Stocks. Like I say, you wouldn't want that to be continuously updating that. If people can view it, if they're actually creating issues in it, that's going to be very disruptive to them actually kind of making sure they have all the latest issues. So you have this publish barrier before it's uploaded. Now you can actually schedule this to happen on a particular day in the week, which I have done. It's a Friday at 1 a.m. But what I can do is I can just force that publish to happen a little bit earlier. So I can just hit publish in here, and this will be pushing that latest model up to Autodesk Docs. So I will be getting a loading symbol in Autodesk Docs in my Docs area. So I've just got flicked back to the browser now. I'm not in Revit anymore. I'm just going to head back to that work in progress folder and just quickly show you that I am actually working on that model in here. By publishing that model, I have indeed got a new version. This will be version 6 uploading to this. Now this isn't instant. It's not going to be, it's going to take a little while to do this. So I'm going to be moving on and coming back to that change. But very easy to work inside of Revit. This setup is exactly the same as all your previous workflows. If you work share it currently, very similar to setup. Very easy to use inside of Revit in terms of making sure that you're synchronizing with Essential, so you always have those saves. And the interface in here makes it really easy to find the files that you want. You obviously have on recent files your model that you've most recently opened, so you could actually just open your cloud models directly from here as well if you wanted to. So with this interface, like I say, anything you're saving into the cloud, very easy to work with. And one of the things I mentioned was that, let's say your laptop dies, IT can always kind of be that kind of crux sometimes. You have access to another laptop with Revit on it. You don't need to connect that laptop perhaps to the server. You can just access login with your username and then open up that file and work on it. And you've got then perhaps no downtime in terms of the work that you're doing. So it's just made easier by the fact that I can always access this from anywhere. So hopefully that covers everything inside of Revit. I'm going to head back to my browser now, and I'm going to be, first of all, I'll just quickly head to the issues area and have a look at that issue that I've just worked on, just to show you that it is all in here. So that double door that we've just created an issue for, it's in review. I mean, if I was looking at this from the manager's point of view, I would have got a notification, and you can actually control notifications so you don't get them individually. You can get them wrapped up every hour, every 24 hours if you want to in one email, so you don't get bombarded by so many emails, you're not going to do anything with them. But all of the information in here, I could just have a quick look and I kind of know then what I need to be checking in the model, and I have access to that model from a link within the issue as well. So that's the process for opening the collaborative models inside of Revit. So if you want a team working on those models, the workflow we just looked at, and to be able to use that issues tool, you'll need Collaborate Pro. If you're somebody who's just dealing with this cloud platform here, you're just dealing with the information that's perhaps now been shared by the designer, then you just need Collaborate. So just to really kind of hammer home that distinction. So what I should see now is, because I have a more recently published model in my architects folder, should see when it becomes available, there it is, that there is a more recently published file. Now the other teams, because they won't have access to that, won't see it, but as the document controller, I know that perhaps I need to create a package on the Friday of this latest published file. It's just really so that you have insight into, there is a new model that has been published, and the circle represents a formally published package of information. Right, okay. So that's the design collaboration area, and that's Revit. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to head to the model coordination area and just show you what changes or what kind of abilities you have with the model coordination side of things. So obviously we're sharing a lot of models in this, and perhaps a lot of teams are sharing models with each other. And as you're sharing those models, there are models going into various folders. Like I mentioned, there was the folder in Autodesk Stocks, which I called the swim lanes folder, which essentially is taking the most recently shared model and then publishing the model into that folder. And so in the model coordination area that we're looking at here, what we can do is we can aim what we're automatically clash detecting at a folder. And anything in that folder or its subfolders, whether it's a DWG, an IFC, or a Revit file, can be clashed and checked, and it will happen automatically. And so what we're looking at here, and this is a very long list, and you might be thinking, why is this such a long list? So each of the Revit models that have been shared have had the views, 3D views, prefixed with AD for Autodesk Stocks, published so that in the model coordination area, I can actually clash the floors against each other. Now, this might not be the way that you want to clash. In fact, probably if I went back and changed it, I would maybe just use the steel work out of here, or maybe just parts of the model interior, exterior walls. And I just publish a view from Revit with what I want to clash. And so perhaps maybe what I want to do in here is I just want to view some models together. Very easy to find because I've named them correctly. I can just search for third floor, and I can see here that I have architects, electrical, structural, mechanical, plumbing, third floor. I can then just select two of these. So I'll choose electrical and structural. I'll choose mechanical as well. I'll just hit view. What this is going to do then is it's going to open up those three models combined. And obviously this is just the third floor that we're looking at here. So we can see here that we've got the structure, the mechanical, and the electrical all together. And a really useful function of this system is actually just to be able to save this view. I know it sounds like quite a small thing, but if you're working with the amount of views I just showed you, maybe you've got hundreds, you're going to be coming back to very similar ones again, again, and again. And so what I could do in here is I can actually just save this view. The naming convention is always handy. So I'm going to type in third, and then I'm going to just type in who it is. So the elect plus mech. Okay, the same. Oh, the spelling and visualizations and then structure. There we go. So I've got two options when I create these views, and this is where I'm kind of showing this. You can keep them private, so they're just for you. So if you have a very small team of coordinators, maybe who are working very particular parts for themselves, you keep it private. If there are things that you know other people who have access to this model coordination area are going to need, then I would go with published, because that will then publish it to them. So I'll keep this private and I hit save view. So what I've done there is next time I come back to this system, I'll be able to just open up these three same models without having to find them and then choose which ones I want. Because maybe I'm doing specifically, there's been an issue on floor 3 recently with coordination, and I need to really kind of hammer down what's going on. So I'm then going to hit the next button down on the left here, which goes from my models to my clashes in here. So what I can actually do, which is quite interesting in the system, is I can actually clash multiple models with each other. So I'm clashing the electrical model here with the mechanical and the structural model, and I'm getting 12 clashes. If I just click on one of these clashes, we can have a quick look at what that might be. So this looks like it's the flex duct. Let's see if we can find a better one. So I think, yeah, these are lights that are sitting maybe just a little bit in the wrong place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an issue from one of these, and then I'm going to go through the workflow for maybe fixing the clashes that we've got here. A new feature that has come out recently is this tolerance, the ability to add a tolerance to this. So the tolerance is an allowable amount that your clashes can sit within. It's not checking distances around, it's checking the allowable tolerance. The reason this can be quite useful is if you are checking a model and perhaps you've got a lot of kind of things that are sitting on walls where the openings haven't been created, or maybe you've got lights that are right next to terminals and they're 0, and so they're actually picking up as clashes. If you just type a 1 mil into that, I found that you can actually essentially emit a load of clashes that aren't actually clashes. So just to quickly show you how that works, I type in 2 in there, millimeters. So all of these clashes are within 2 millimeters. If I type in 2000, we're not going to get anything because they're outside the tolerance. There is nothing that is clashing within 2 meters of each other. So quite a nice tool, really useful for being able to filter down on things as well. So what I'll do, like I say, is I'll just grab one of these clashes. So that looks like a pretty bad one. So to create an issue out of this, what I can do is I can just tick it on the list of clashes I've got, create an issue. So you're going to want to click on the element that you want the person, or whoever you're going to want to fix the element. So it's going to be this light. And that's the reason for that is because of what we looked at inside of Revit. When you pick this up, you want to be able to actually get to the element. And what this is going to do, exactly the same interface. The only difference is we have a lot of information about what this issue actually is. So we've got the title set to M plane recessed light fixtures and 2 other objects. Might want to change that just so I have a little bit more description. I'm going to leave it as it is. Description, automatically 2 clashes between M plane. It's just the family names and the models that it's picking up on here. And then again, I can assign to a specific person, fill in all of these useful pieces of information. And now whoever needs to fix this is going to get a mail to say there's something that needs to fix. It's actually also going to, I think I picked up on 2 clashes there. It's also going to take it out of the clashes in here. And the reason it's doing that is because you're aiming to getting yourself to sort of 0 clashes, and all of those issues are being saved in your assigned issues. And so the process for fixing this will be, now that this has gone to the designer to fix, they'll come back with their in review, like we did with the door, upload the model. Once it's shared, it's going to automatically update the model as in my model coordination space. And then at that point, as the person may be coordinating the project, I can check whether that has actually been fixed or not. I'm not going to be able to upload the fix to this today because it does take a little while for the model coordination space to update. And so it just be variable how long that takes. But I can go through the process for picking that up. So one of the things I did in here as well was to create a view. Like I say, it's a very useful thing to be able to create a view. We're doing what I started with is in the models area. You can view everything as a clash matrix if you want to. So this is every single view against each other. Obviously, to make this a bit easier for yourself, naming conventions, again, very useful. Type in 3rd in here and I'll just get the clashes for the 3rd floor in the matrix. If I wanted to, I've actually named all of the full models, full model. And I can clash the entire models against each in here if I wanted to as well. That view that I created, I could check the clash matrix between just the 3rd floor, elect, mech, and structural. So these are the clashes that we were just looking at in the model in a clash matrix. But you can see here it's really quick. It's really easy. If you've got a good naming convention, if you've got a good outputs from Revit, you can actually find things very, very easily. I've got all my issues in my assigned area. So I've got that planed recessed lighting fixture. And this will have gone to designer, like I said, to be able to fix. What I didn't show as well is it actually does give you a little thumbnail in the photos. That's not too important because you can actually just pick this issue up inside of Revit anyway, but it's just worth mentioning that it does automatically create that in there for you. And we've only closed out issues in here as well. I think we've only got one that I've closed out. So what I will do is I will go into Revit and we will have a quick look at that clash that we've got. So I'll open up the electrical model from the electrical team's point of view and just quickly find that, but I'm not going to be able to show how the model coordination looks once you fixed it. Hopefully you can kind of imagine what's going to happen next. So all your views are saved in here. So I've created a few other views. But like I say, you're rarely working on everything. You're going to be working on very specific things, probably week to week. And so being able to save your views and control what you see is going to be really useful. So these aren't views in the sense of a camera angle. They are just views in the sense of you're saving the selection that you have. Again, you have meetings, very useful if you're having coordination, flash meetings perhaps. Again, to save all of the information that you're having in those meetings in one nice and easy place to find. So this actually does link back to the meetings that we had. It's the same area as we had in the design collaboration area as well, but it's all searchable and very easy to find things. As you're creating the issues, what's likely to happen is maybe someone who doesn't deal with the issues but does want a kind of archived report or perhaps a daily report of everything that's going on with issues. You have the ability to be able to report issues in both Autodesk Stocks on its own if you wanted to, and obviously in this system here as well. So these are schedulable, but essentially what this will allow you to do is to create a report based on the metadata within your issues. So what I could do here is I could say, well, I want a full issue detail. I want overdue for design issues. So I want overdue design issues specifically for Jonny Pye, so myself. So what I can do in here is I can say, well, I want due date. I'll say overdue. I want another filter in here to say assigned to, and then Jonny. And then what I can do is I can just run this report. Like I say, there are ways of scheduling these. So we'll set that up as a schedule. So when I'm setting these up as a schedule, once I've run the report, I'll be able to set this up so that you can actually get the reports every week at a specific time. You can have it emailed to you on a Monday or something every Monday, and you get a good overview on the project. So there's some really nice, useful reporting features within both Autodesk Stocks as well. This capability is in Autodesk Stocks, and issues that you might be creating from model coordination perspectives as well. So all the metadata that you put into those issues are going to be very useful throughout the project. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to head into Revit, and I'm just going to quickly pick up the electrical model as well. Really, this is kind of just going over the same thing again. So if I go back to my work in progress, head to my electrical model. I'm going to pick this up in here. What I'm going to do after this as well, I've actually got some links here from a local copy of some of the models, which is why it's going to upgrade. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show the Navisworks workflow as well. So there is the capability to be able to create issues inside of Navisworks, and you do actually get a license of Navisworks with the Collaborate or Collaborate Pro licenses. So that will be suffixed with a little BIM 360, I think it is at the moment, but essentially there's a workflow from Navisworks through to Autodesk Stocks if you wanted a bit of a review, and then into Revit if you needed it. So if you're doing maybe clash detection, that's going to pick up on things that aren't necessarily doing hard clashes, then Navisworks is going to be your kind of go-to. The clash detection system that we've looked at inside of Autodesk model coordination, it just picks up on hard clashes. And like I said, the tolerance is just to emit clashes within a certain distance. So this should open up in a second, and this will be my electrical model. Like I said, the reason it's doing these updates is just because there are some links to a local copy of the models. So it might take a little while to download. What I might do while this is just uploading is I might just head into Navisworks and pick up the same clash that I have just been working on, and just quickly show you the process for actually getting the models into Navisworks as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to just click new, and I'm going to start from fresh, just to show you from the start process for using Navisworks. So if I head to my coordination space in Navisworks, and some of you might not have this tab, this is actually something that you'll need to download as an add-in, exactly the same as the issues function inside of Revit as well. Once you've downloaded this coordination space, I can go to open, and what this will actually do is it will link to the models that you have in your coordination space in model coordination. So those models that we were just looking at in model coordination are all here. And what I can do is I can actually, if I wanted to, I can actually go to my views and I can just choose my 3/3 electric, mech, and structural, and I can just open up those models. And these are going to be opening up the latest models that have been published to Model Coordinate. So again, these are the latest models, and you can save NWFs. I found you can save NWFs to Autodesk Stocks and then use those in here as well. So perhaps what I'm doing here is maybe there's been clashes that have been created in Model Coordinate. I'm then actually going to create some other types of clashes inside of Navisworks, maybe slightly different reasons. Maybe it's picking up on where there's not enough space. But I'm using perhaps the two in the hybrid kind of mode, or maybe I'm just using them as a kind of, kind of dual parallel side-by-side system, Navisworks and Model Coordinate together. So in here we can see with the Issues tab open, it looks very much like Revit. I can just click on the issues that I've got here, and it'll take me directly to those clashes that we've created as issues in Model Coordinate. So it's a very nice workflow for being able to just double check things if you need to. So within Navisworks, what I'll probably quickly do is I could create an issue, and we'll pick that issue up in Autodesk Stocks, and I'll be able to pick it up in Revit once it opens as well. So if I was running clash detection, it would be exactly as I normally would. I don't have a clash detection in here. I could run a report on some of the models against each other, as I've got here. I'm actually just going to create an issue in space. So if I zoom down to one of my lights, I can see perhaps maybe this light is a little bit close to this one. I did have some that were actually poking around in some of the ducts that I have, but I'll just create an issue on this one here. So if I just expand this out just a touch, close down this issue, create an issue, pop it on this element. Exactly the same process, except I'm doing all of this inside of Navisworks. So depending on where your workflows are, you could use the model coordination for a bit of a spell check, and you could use Navisworks for your more formal clash detection if you wanted to. So now that I've got exactly the same open here, I could assign this to myself again, give this a due date, and then we are good. So I've created another issue. So I've created one model coordination issue inside of Autodesk Model Coordinate, and I've created one issue inside of Navisworks. So this workflow is actually going to be quite nice for being able to show you picking up both processes inside of Revit once I open up that electrical model. So heading into my electrical model inside of Revit, now that I've created those two issues, if I head to a 3D view, so I'm pretending I'm the electrical team in this case, doing a little bit of flitting between. And I head to my Issues tab again. What I should be able to do, just refresh my issues in here. I'll load the issues in from the other model. So what I should have open is the two issues that I've created from the model coordination, or it'll be the shared pathway in terms of the Revit model. So I've got these 4 issues on here. I'll open these up. So this really demonstrates if you do have issues against any of the models inside of Autodesk Stocks that relate to your model, you can always pick those up. So this first one is the clash that was created in Model Coordinate. Exactly the same process before. If I click on that plane lighting recessed, it's going to take me to the same view that it was created in initially. The reason it does that is in an attempt to assume that you're going to be able to see whatever it was in terms of the pin that was created. So we can see here that this light is in fact inside the air terminal that we've got. So what I could do, if I head to my top view here, it's going to be quite an easy one to fix. Use the align tool, grab the edge of my, say it's going to be easy. Doing this in 3D probably isn't the best option. Grab the align there, grab my tool, sort that issue out. Set this to in review. add any comments that I might need to have added, maybe add some, like I say, you can customize the issues inside of here. So you could add some more fields that perhaps people would need to be working on. I've also got an activity log in here as well. So this gives me quite a good oversight in terms of if there was a history to this issue, what is actually going on in it. And at the bottom, like I said, it's kind of like messages or comments. So you could say, this is done, and then I can submit this. Cool. So I've updated that issue there. I'll click on this coordination and issues we've got on the other side of here. So this was actually created in the same view. So again, it's going to give me my pin that I put onto a light, except instead of that being in model coordinate, I did that inside of Navisworks. So this really nicely shows the workflow for finding coordination issues, both in model coordinate in the browser. So that's completely browser based, or inside of Navisworks, depending on what workflows you might choose one or the other. You've got a bit, if you've got Navisworks workflow, you've got a bit more control in Navisworks in terms of what you want to clash together. And as you've seen inside of the model coordinate side of things, it uses Revit views, Revit 3D views, and the states those views are in to decipher what elements you're going to be clashing against each other. So we picked up those two pins, we've made the changes, and it would be exactly the same process now for pushing those changes back to Autodesk Stocks. Synchronize with Central, not pushing it up to Autodesk Stocks yet. I've just noticed I've actually forgotten to change this issue here to in pending. If I just move it very slightly. So the designer, just a quick comment about changing the statuses in here. Because I'm an admin, I am seeing all of the different statuses to be able to change this to. A designer who is just receiving this as an assigned issue would not have the option to close out the issue, just in case that was on anyone's minds. Set that to in review. So I'll update that issue, close that down. So we've done all of our work for the day now. Nice and easy issues to work with. And then what I can do is, in fact, probably what the workflow would be here is if I'm just a designer who's working on that model, I would have made my changes, synchronized with Central, and then I would not be publishing the model myself to Autodesk Stocks. This would be perhaps either maybe the design, just a design lead's responsibility to publish it, or like I say, you can actually just schedule the publishing of the model to Autodesk Stocks to happen at a particular time. So again, what I'm going to need to quickly do is just head backwards and then forwards, just to show you that yes, there is an update available, and this is something that I will need to publish. So you could be working on something with an update available, absolutely fine. It doesn't mean you've got an old version, it just means it has not been published to Autodesk Docs yet. So if I head back to my model coordination spaces, head to my clashes, quickly at the assigned, you can see here, we should see that we have the issues in review. So we've got one because there was one that we created as a clash issue. And then if I go to my docs area, or the ones that were created from Navisworks, I'll have all of the issues in one succinct place. So depending on where you create the issues, they will just sit in different places. But this is an exhaustive list of the different clashes. Now, what should have happened in the background as we've been working is the thing I did right at the beginning as the architect was to actually publish the model to Autodesk Docs. I only made one change, but I changed the door to a double door. So I'm going to finish off this technical demonstration on showing essentially that change made and the closing out of that issue. And then in this demonstration, you've seen a full workflow of issues being created on models with shared Revit models being created and then closed out as well. Obviously, there'll probably be more conversation, I suppose, in a project, but it gives you the full workflow of perhaps how you could even replace some email systems that you have with designs going backwards and forwards. So in fact, what I could do is if I go to my issues, it was a design issue. So perhaps this is going to be the design manager who has issued those changes. The designer has made those changes, and then the design manager is making sure that those changes have been made. So what I can do in here is if I filter by my type as design, so all the metadata here is available to you. You can actually filter, if you have thousands in here, you can filter by lots of different things. You can filter by anything that's overdue, anything that's going to be needed in the next 7 days, either today, etc. There's kind of quick links to get to those. So if I click on my double door, I don't need to necessarily actually go to the model to find this issue. I can just find the issue in here. And so I could be checking through each of my issues that I did on I gave to a designer on a certain day. And I can just follow the link through to where that issue lies. So this will open up exactly where that issue was created in exactly the same view. So it is saving that view state. Now, hopefully that architectural model that I was publishing previously has finished processing. I didn't actually check. It looks like perhaps it is still processing. I will just quickly go to the folder and have a look. It looks like it perhaps is still publishing. Just refresh my page to have a quick look. So yeah, it's still publishing. It is, like I say, quite a big model to do this kind of live session on. So it has taken a little while to publish it. The more things that you publish with it as well, it does take a bit of time to unpack the views and the sheets as well. So apologies, I'm not going to be able to finish off the demonstration of that full workflow with showing the design manager fixing it. But suffice to say, all they would be doing would be opening up, double checking that their comments had been instigated, and then closing out the issue. So I could go to in review and then change this to closed once I had double checked that that had in fact been done. And then again, just to reiterate, you've got a full history of everything that went backwards and forwards in the model. So we can see who did exactly what, exactly when within that issue. So if this issue was going backwards and forwards lots, then that's something that you would be able to check essentially and find out if something comes up later, whether there was an issue or not. So that's a pretty much a roundhouse demonstration of Autodesk Stocks. Like I say, taking about a third of the demonstration, and then design collaboration and model coordination taking up the 2/3 of the second part. There's some really nice workflows in there for teams to work on. And we've seen this been used on very large scale projects where there's maybe 30 to 40 different swim lanes being created. All the way down to very small teams who aren't really using the swim lanes, they're just using the system to actually collaborate on in a cloud environment. So it's very scalable. Maybe there's just more or less features that you end up using when you're working with the system itself. And the model coordination, we have found a lot of companies very interested in using it just for a very quick check on the models within the project that you're working on. Just because of that automation, it makes it very easy to find clashes that perhaps wouldn't have been found as quickly if you were doing them through perhaps the traditional workflow, maybe Navisworks or other coordination tools. So hopefully that's been useful. I think what we've got planned at the end is to run through some questions and answers. So we've got a little while to that. Nathan's going to do a presentation on some of the workflows in terms of integration using the ACC platform. So what I think we'll do is if we just pause for a second and we'll just get the questions together, and then we'll be doing through those questions, like I said.
Thank you very much for that, Jonny. It's always good watching, well, I must admit, I enjoy watching Jonny demonstrate the Autodesk Construction Cloud. He's certainly very knowledgeable in terms of some of the deployments he's done. So it's really good to see, and hopefully everyone on the call got something from that. So just while we're readying the questions, I thought I'd just jump on, because I think the key thing for us is when I talk to customers, certainly, is actually adopting the software. So I think it goes with anything, whether it's software or new ways of working, actually having a plan in place and trying to take this on. We see it time and time again where we've taken a customer on or been working with them, technology hasn't quite worked for them. There's certainly been some or a stigma in terms of how BIM 360 used to be acknowledged in the market. And we know that we're starting to come into that Autodesk Construction Cloud, and also the kind of like the consolidated platforms there. So I suppose just in terms of what we tend to follow is pretty much a roadmap in that respect. And as you can see on the screen, it starts with very much that basic onboarding. So actually looking at the organization. Okay, I appreciate with Collaborate Pro, sometimes it's a case of you actually using it because you've actually been told to for a project. But how do you actually ensure that you get long-lasting value out of this? Because rather than just associated some costs from the project, you have the ability to then use the software time and time again. So looking at your workflow, doing a pre-scope, okay, there might be a couple of people that want to actually use the software, but how do you get the wider team onto it? So actually doing a bit of pre-planning will then actually ensure the longevity of the program in the organization for months and years to come. So once you do that first step, then it comes on to the initial training. Admin, actually getting someone that has some knowledge within the organization. I appreciate having someone that knows BIM Collaborate Pro or the Autodesk Construction Cloud umbrella like Jonny is very, very difficult to do. So we would always support you with that. But having some basic skills in there certainly does help you. Then comes on to the user training. But once you've done the user training, it's quite quick and easy. It's about transferring those skill set live onto projects and actually getting them using it in anger. And once you've done that, there's then the additional parts that you can then look to take. So whilst we're talking about Autodesk Stocks and the kind of like the platform that underpins all of the different variants in the construction cloud, you can then look at BIM Collaborate Pro, collaborate, take off, build, if those products and services are right for you. In terms of the kind of like the final step, again, you need to have some sort of documentation in the organization. If you don't have that, then ultimately, if say people were to leave or if they're not using the program anymore, you quickly lose any ability that you have to use and operate those products. And again, it would take even more time in the longer run when you come back to it in the second stab. Another thing that we've seen of real uptake on is actually short videos, feature videos, workflow videos. Actually having those, we can create them for you, or we can support you making them as well. So we've done those things, and I think that really starts to help if you're then actually talking about larger deployments or potentially external contractors. So there are kind of like, this is the basis that we like to form in terms of adopting these programs. It is the same with all technology, but in terms of the construction cloud in particular, I think Jonny will certainly say that he's seen people or organizations that haven't done it probably how they anticipated to, and at that first opportunity. So we could talk more, or I'm open to answering any questions that are either on this call or at a later stage. So feel free to contact us. But I will now hand over to Jonny because I think we're ready with the questions.
Okay, so just to answer some of the questions that have come in during the session that we've just run. So first of all, thank you for everyone for attending. I hope it's been really, really useful for what we've gone through. We managed to get to quite a lot in the time that we have. So question from John back. We can only see the linked models in the 2D sheets. So I assume the 2D sheets that you'll be looking at will be the ones within the model or shared from the model. The reason for that, I believe it's being looked at, is because the links that you are working with need to be models that are cloud models, essentially. So they need to be ones that have been instigated through Revit into either BIM 360 or the new platform. We can take that one offline if you want. We can have a quick look at it. But essentially, if you just upload the files as they are and the links are somewhere else, then the links will not show. It has to be from a cloud shared model for you to be able to see them. Next question from Reese. Do we need to recreate and publish new 3D views in all the Revit files for specific levels to show up in the model coordination tool? So the model coordination tool as it stands uses the views from Revit, so the published views from Revit. So there are different workflows that you could go through to create the views you might need. So I broke it down by floor, which is quite easy to do inside of Revit. You could use view templates to create specific views, and you could share those view templates with other companies as well, to be able to create views that you want. So with certain categories on, or maybe showing certain things over others. But the views that you share have to be the ones that you want to clash. You can't create things like sets or selection sets, rules and things like that within the platform yet. Everything that you do in terms of clashing is done from the views that you take out of Revit. So what I have done is in the past, if you just export the entire model, and then you can set the workflow inside of Navisworks up. And then inside of, if you do want to use the matrix, if you like, there are ways that I actually didn't look at where you can break up your system, you can break up the elements in the clash detection by object, system, and type, which really hones down on specific clashes. You can view the clashes in a kind of global setting. But it is all at the moment dictated by what you export from Revit. So other options might be, you could create a Dynamo script that automatically creates the views you want within the projects you've got based on the elements that you want to see. Or there's the view templates perhaps. So that pretty much, I think, answers Liam's question about model coordination in terms of selection sets and rule sets. So the question is, for model coordination, are you now able to set up selection sets like Navisworks or rule sets like Solibri to create specific and targeted clash detection? So those selection sets are essentially coming from Revit, if you like, the views that you get from Revit. And at the moment, there's no way to break those down other than, like I say, within the specific clashes, basing them on object, system, or type. System's quite a good one if you're mechanical, because if you can clash an entire system together if you want to, bit by bit or system by system. So that is quite useful to break those clashes down. And then the last question, again, that we have from Liam is, are you able to check or view the IFC schema in Docs? Having the wrong IFC schema has caused multiple issues on projects in the past. So I think I would have to double check exactly what you can get and what you want from that question. You can see properties. I would just have to double check whether the IF schema that you want to see is the one that you want to be able to check. The hierarchy is searchable, so there is potentially something there that would help you figure out whether there is or isn't something within that IF schema that is or isn't correct. So we'll take that one offline, and maybe we can have a bit of a discussion about that question in a bit more detail. So there are all the questions I can see. I don't think anyone's asked any more questions. If you do have more questions, if there is any questions, or if there's a conversation that you want to have around Collaborate Pro or the cloud platforms, any of them at all, then please do get in touch with us. We're here to help. Actually, potentially there is no question. No, so we have answered all the questions. But like I say, any questions, fire them our way. We're always here to help out. I really like this system, so any challenging questions are always welcome. Hence the IRC schema one is quite a nice question. But I hope everything's been useful today. And I'll let Nathan finish off with the closeout.
Thank you very much, Jonny. So please feel free to get in touch if you do have any more questions. I know that a few people on the call have been talking to us more recently, so we're more than happy to go speak to Jonny or get the individual that's working with you in your account manager to help you. I think the final thing from me is by all means look out for our future events that we're running. We are starting to run a lot more virtual events more regularly in terms of that future design and build initiatives that we've been doing over the past few years. So we've got a really good one actually in a few weeks' time where Jonny actually will be back on talking about Dynamo. So it's a really hot topic at the moment, and I think there seems to be a lot of customers talking to us about that. Again, into October, then we have a more wider look at the Autodesk Construction Cloud. I appreciate we've looked at BIM Collaborate, BIM Collaborate Pro and Docs, but there are some other tools in there which we'll look to cover. And then there's a big one. So on the 20th of October, we do have one of the directors here, Phil Reed, with a guest speaker from UCAS talking about the training and professional certification program that's going on at the moment. So register in the link below so you can see that in terms on our website, the events page, and also it would be good to hear from people on the call about maybe say areas that you want us to look at, because there seems to be an awful lot of change going on with some of the technologies and the softwares. If there's something that you feel that we can run, look, we're more than happy to do that. So please message us, get in touch with the team, and hopefully we'll speak to you soon. Thank you very much.